The amphitheater buzzed with excitement as over 200 students from across the galaxy settled into their bioadaptive seats. The Galactic University of Kepler 442b's Advanced Predator Studies course was legendary, not just for its comprehensive curriculum, but for Professor Zithkar's theatrical presentation style that made even the most seasoned xenobiology students question their safety among the stars. Professor Zithkar emerged from the faculty entrance with characteristic dramatic flair. Her serpentine form moved with predatory grace, iridescent scales shifting through a spectrum of blues and greens that indicated professional excitement. 4 analytical eyes swept across the diverse assembly of students, chittering Veltar insectoids, translucent aquarians with their perpetually flowing tentacles, crystalline shard-he beings that chimed softly when they moved, and dozens of other species representing the peaceful garden worlds that dominated galactic civilization. "Welcome, future xenobiologists," she announced, her translator rendering her complex vocalizations into standard galactic with perfect clarity. "Today, we begin our study of the galaxy's most lethal evolutionary mistakes." Nervous laughter rippled through the auditorium. In the third row, Marcus Chen adjusted his note-taking device and tried to blend in with his alien classmates. To anyone observing, he appeared unremarkable, just another bipedal mammalian species from some obscure world. His university records listed his origin as Sol 3, a designation that meant nothing to most students and faculty. He'd specifically chosen this remote posting to avoid attention, seeking nothing more than a quality education in xenobiology. The massive holographic display activated, showing a 3-dimensional map of known space with various planetary classifications highlighted in different colors. "Class 12 Deathworlds," Professor Zithkar began, her scales darkening to emphasize the gravity of her words, "represent less than 0.3% of habitable planets in our galaxy, yet they are responsible for producing evolutionary nightmares that defy all conventional biological wisdom." Marcus felt his stomach tighten as the display zoomed in on a familiar blue and green marble orbiting a yellow star. "Our primary case study, Terra, designation Sol 3, located in the galactic backwater we call the Sol system." The planet rotated slowly in the hologram, showing continents Marcus recognized from childhood geography lessons. Around him, students leaned forward with morbid fascination, unaware that they were studying the homeworld of the quiet human sitting among them. "But it is Terra's fauna that truly exemplifies Deathworld evolution," Professor Zithkar announced, her scales darkening with academic excitement. "Every ecological niche breeds increasingly specialized killers." The holographic display erupted with the image of a massive bipedal predator, its jaw lined with serrated teeth the size of daggers. Several students in the rear amphitheater seats instinctively recoiled from the projection. "Behold the Tyrannosaur Rex, mercifully extinct for 65 million Terran years. Standing 6 meters tall, with a bite force exceeding 60,000 standard pressure units, sufficient to crush our university's transport shuttles." A nervous Florian student raised her feathered appendage. "Professor, how could any ecosystem sustain such monstrosities?" "Excellent question, Pipfi. Terra's biosphere operates on hyper-competitive principles, where extreme predation isn't just sustainable, it's mandatory for survival." The display shifted to oceanic scenes. "Consider current apex predators like the Carcharodon carcharius." Marcus suppressed a knowing smile as great white sharks materialized in the hologram, their sleek forms cutting through blue water with deadly precision. He fondly remembered his marine biology professor at UC San Diego showing similar footage, though with considerably less existential dread in the classroom. The great white shark represents 400 million years of evolutionary perfection. These living weapons detect a single drop of blood diluted in 100 liters of water and accelerate faster than most atmospheric vehicles. They are, quite literally, swimming death incarnate. A collective shudder rippled through the diverse student body. Marcus discreetly hoped his roommate Kexty would never learn about his gap-year cage diving adventures off the South African coast. Yet even these pale before Terra's pack hunters, Professor Zithkar continued, her voice dropping to what Marcus recognized as the Velconian equivalent of a horrified whisper. Canis lupus, the Terran wolf, demonstrates supernatural coordination and persistence. They pursue prey across hundreds of kilometers for weeks, never abandoning the hunt, never showing mercy. Marcus thought fondly of Max, his childhood German shepherd who had been terrified of butterflies and once gotten trapped in the doggy door for 2 hours. Perspective, he mused, was indeed everything. The professor's scales shifted to deep crimson, maximum academic intensity. But these macro-predators are merely Terra's most visible horrors. However, Professor Zithkar announced, her voice dropping to what Marcus recognized as the Velconian equivalent of a terrified whisper. Terra's macro-predators are not its deadliest inhabitants. The holographic display shifted dramatically, zooming into microscopic realms that revealed writhing, alien shapes magnified thousands of times. The amphitheater fell into stunned silence, broken only by nervous chittering for the insectoid students and the soft harmonic distress of crystalline beings. Terran microorganisms represent a galactic-class biohazard, the professor continued, her scales now cycling through warning colors that made several students shift uncomfortably in their seats. A single cubic centimeter of Terran soil contains more bacterial cells than there are stars in our local cluster. These microscopic killers survive in boiling sulfur springs, Arctic permafrost, concentrated acids that would dissolve starship hulls, and even the vacuum of space itself. A gaseous nebulae student's form flickered with visible distress. Professor, how does any complex life survive such microbial warfare? Through billion-year evolutionary arms races that continue to this day, Professor Zithkar replied, manipulating the display to show viral structures that resembled geometric nightmares. Consider the influenza virus, a microscopic shapeshifter that mutates so rapidly that Terra's dominant species must develop new countermeasures annually, forever locked in biological warfare with an enemy that adapts faster than their technology. Marcus discreetly activated his immune system booster implant, standard issue for students from high bacterial load worlds. His obsessive hygiene habits had earned strange looks from dormmates who couldn't comprehend living in a sterile bubble. The biodiversity index of Terra exceeds every other known world combined by a factor of 12, the professor continued, showing impossible landscapes where life thrived in conditions that would sterilize most planets. Ocean trenches with crushing pressure and superheated volcanic vents, frozen wastelands where bacteria live inside solid ice, acidic pools that would melt our strongest alloys, yet life not only survives but flourishes. The display showed Yellowstone's colorful hot springs, their alien beauty masking the extremophile communities that called such hellish conditions home. Every square meter represents a microscopic battlefield where millions of species wage endless war for survival. Victory means becoming a more efficient killer. Defeat means extinction. Marcus tried not to think about the trillions of microorganisms currently living in peaceful symbiosis throughout his human body. Which brings us, Professor Zithkar announced, her scales shifting to deep crimson, indicating maximum academic intensity, to Terra's ultimate predator. The species that not only survived this evolutionary nightmare, but achieved complete planetary dominance. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as hushed anticipation filled the amphitheater. His alien classmates leaned forward with morbid fascination, eager to learn about the galaxy's most terrifying killer. Homo sapiens, the Terran human. Anatomical diagrams and behavioral analysis charts materialized in the holographic display. Marcus was relieved to see standard scientific imagery rather than anything too personally revealing. Humans represent the perfect synthesis of Terran lethality and intelligence, the professor continued, manipulating the hologram to show persistence hunting patterns. Unlike specialized apex predators, humans became ultimate generalists, capable of adapting their tactics to hunt literally anything that moves. The display demonstrated endurance hunting scenarios that made several students visibly uncomfortable. They are persistence predators who literally run their prey to death across vast distances. Their unique sweating mechanism allows continuous cooling while their victims collapse from heat exhaustion. A melodic crystalline student chimed with confusion. "Professor, their physical specifications appear unremarkable? No natural weapons? Limited sensory range? Relatively modest size?" Astute observation, resonance of morning light. Humans compensated for individual limitations through tool creation and pack coordination that surpasses even Terra's wolves. They don't require natural weapons, they manufacture superior ones. The progression of human weaponry flashed through the display, stone knives evolving into complex projectile systems. Marcus tried not to think about his uncle's shooting lessons at the family ranch. More disturbing is their psychological profile. Humans engage in what xenopsychologists term recreational violence. They pursue combat and dangerous activities purely for entertainment. They voluntarily subject themselves to pain and stress as improvement mechanisms. Images of extreme sports cascaded past: rock climbing, skydiving, martial arts competitions. Marcus counted 3 sports where he held medals, trying to maintain his neutral expression. But here lies humanity's most chilling characteristic, Professor Zithkar concluded, her scales darkening ominously. Their capacity for civilization while retaining full predatory programming. The hologram shifted to show sprawling human cities, technological marvels built by apex predators who had never lost their killer instincts. But here, class, we encounter humanity's most chilling aspect, Professor Zithkar continued, her voice taking on the Velconian tone of academic horror. Their capacity for what they term civilization. The holographic display transformed to show human metropolitan areas, vast cities sprawling across Terra's surface like geometric infections, their lights visible from orbital distance. Humans are the only known species to achieve technological advancement while retaining full predatory capabilities, the professor explained, her scales flickering through warning patterns. Most civilized species lose aggressive traits as they develop intelligence and social cooperation. Humans simply weaponized them. A timeline materialized showing parallel tracks of human technological development and warfare capabilities. The correlation was disturbingly linear, each innovation seemingly driven by the need for more efficient killing. In merely 12,000 years, an evolutionary microsecond, humans progressed from stone tools to atomic fission. They accomplished this not despite their Deathworld origins, but because of them. Every breakthrough was motivated by their compulsion to kill more effectively. Marcus shifted uncomfortably as images of human conflicts played across the display. The professor's analysis wasn't technically wrong, but seeing his species' history presented as pure scientific horror felt deeply unsettling. Consider their approach to space exploration, Professor Zithkar continued. Most species develop interstellar capabilities to seek knowledge or resources. Humans developed it to escape their dying world, a planet they had rendered nearly uninhabitable through their own industrial processes. A methane-breathing Vaperi student bubbled an anxious question. "Professor, if they're so dangerous, why haven't they expanded beyond their system? Surely they would seek new worlds to consume?" Professor Zithkar's scales shifted to surprised blue mixed with deep concern. They have begun expanding. Recent intelligence confirms human colonies on multiple worlds in their local region. More alarming, they appear to be terraforming these worlds to replicate Terra's harsh conditions. Marcus thought about his sister Sarah, currently working on Mars colony's atmospheric processors. Her enthusiastic video calls describing the creation of Earth-like environments suddenly seemed more ominous from this perspective. The Galactic Council maintains strict quarantine around the Sol system. No direct contact is permitted. The contamination risk, biological, technological, and cultural, is deemed catastrophically high. An Aquarian student's tentacles rippled with nervous curiosity. "Professor, has there ever been direct contact with humans? Any behavioral studies in controlled environments?" Professor Zithkar's scales flickered, uncertainty mixed with academic rigor creating complex patterns Marcus had learned to recognize. There have been unconfirmed reports, rumors of human specimens in various research facilities. However, the Galactic Ethics Council has classified all such research as Category 5 violations. Marcus maintained steady breathing through conscious effort. His scholarship to Galactic University was suddenly making disturbing sense. The extensive medical examinations during orientation, psychological evaluations disguised as aptitude tests, constant monitoring of his dietary habits and exercise routines, they believed they were studying a specimen. The fundamental challenge, the professor continued, is that humans appear impossible to study safely. Their psychological profiles indicate natural manipulation abilities and sophisticated deception capabilities. Any human aware of observation would likely alter behavior to achieve desired outcomes. A gaseous student's form shimmered with confusion. Surely covert observation would be feasible? "Theoretical but impractical," Professor Zithkar replied, her scales shifting to academic frustration colors. Humans possess what they call intuition, a threat detection system operating at near paranormal levels. They evolved to sense predators and dangers before conscious recognition occurs. This makes covert surveillance extremely difficult. Marcus suppressed a knowing smile. He'd identified his watchers during his first week on campus. The maintenance workers perpetually adjusting equipment when he passed, researchers conducting suspiciously frequent dormitory surveys, conversations that ceased when he entered common areas. His human instincts had automatically cataloged every anomaly. Furthermore, she continued, humans demonstrate remarkable environmental adaptability. Even successful covert observation would yield data from artificial conditions rather than natural behavioral patterns. The crystalline student chimed in with harmonic curiosity. "Professor, hypothetically, if a human were somehow integrated into galactic society without detection, what behavioral indicators would reveal its presence?" Professor Zithkar's scales cycled through complex colors, deep thought mixed with professional concern. Marcus felt ice forming in his stomach despite the warm amphitheater. Theoretical identification would prove challenging given their mimicry abilities. However, certain evolutionary behaviors would be nearly impossible to suppress completely. The professor began compiling a list that made Marcus's blood run cold. Professor Zithkar began listing characteristics, and Marcus felt ice forming in his stomach despite the warm classroom. Excessive physical activity would be unavoidable. Humans require constant movement and exercise to maintain psychological stability. They would likely seek out the most challenging physical activities available. Marcus thought about his daily runs through the campus gravity adjustment chambers, pushing himself through levels that left most other students exhausted. Dietary patterns would be distinctive. Humans are omnivores with unusually high caloric requirements. They would consume proteins that other species find disturbing and show concerning enthusiasm for foods others consider dangerous. Last week's incident with the hazardous Regelian fire fruit suddenly seemed less amusing. He'd eaten the entire bowl while his dormmates watched in horror. Social behavior would include dominance displays disguised as entertainment. Humans call it competition. They would be unable to resist challenging others, even in supposedly cooperative environments. Marcus realized he'd been unconsciously keeping track of his academic ranking versus his classmates. He was currently third in the class and had been strategizing ways to improve his standing. Most tellingly, the professor continued, her scales now shifting to warning colors. Humans possess predatory assessment behaviors. They automatically catalog the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of everyone around them, not from malice, but from evolutionary programming. Marcus's blood went cold. He had indeed been doing exactly that, noting which students were physically weakest, which ones were most easily startled, which seating positions offered the best tactical advantages. He'd assumed everyone did this. Professor Zithkar turned to survey the classroom, her 4 eyes methodically examining each student. The theoretical human would likely be watching us right now, analyzing our reactions, calculating threat levels and escape routes. Her gaze lingered on Marcus for a moment longer than the others. Her scales flickered through a rapid sequence that his translation implant couldn't interpret. "Class dismissed," she announced suddenly. "Remember, your papers on Deathworld adaptation strategies are due next cycle." As students began filing out, chattering nervously about the lecture, Professor Zithkar's voice carried clearly over the noise. "Mr. Chen, from Sol 3, please remain behind. I'd like to discuss your research proposal." Marcus sat frozen as the classroom emptied. When the last student had left, Professor Zithkar approached his desk, her scales now displaying a pattern he'd never seen before, complex, shifting, almost hypnotic. "So," she said, her translator rendering her words in perfect unaccented English, "how long have you known that we knew?" Marcus met her 4-eyed gaze steadily, his human instincts finally allowing him to drop the pretense he'd maintained for months. "Since about week 3. The surveillance was too obvious, but I wasn't sure if it was official or just academic curiosity." Professor Zithkar's scales shifted to what Marcus now realized was the Velconian equivalent of laughter. "Official, I'm afraid, though I must admit the academic curiosity has been substantial." "So, what happens now?" Marcus asked, calculating distances to exits and analyzing potential weapons in the classroom. Just as she'd described, he couldn't help himself.
"Now," Professor Zithkar said, settling into a chair across from him, "we have a conversation. You see, Mr. Chen, you've been a far better test subject than you realize. Not because we've been studying you covertly, but because you've been proving our theories wrong." Marcus raised an eyebrow, a gesture that seemed to fascinate her. 3 months of close observation, and you haven't killed anyone? You've made friends. You've helped struggling classmates with their studies. You've shown empathy, kindness, and genuine intellectual curiosity. Either you're the most sophisticated actor in galactic history, or maybe your theories about humans are incomplete, Marcus finished. Precisely. Her scales shifted to deep purple. Respect, he realized. "So, Mr. Chen, from the Deathworld Terra, would you be interested in helping us rewrite the textbooks?" Marcus looked around the empty classroom, thinking about his new friends, his studies, and the opportunity to bridge 2 worlds, one that feared humans as monsters, and one that had never learned they weren't alone in the universe. "Professor," he said, with a distinctly human grin that showed just a hint of predator's teeth, "I thought you'd never ask." Outside the classroom windows, the alien sun set over an alien landscape, while inside, two species began the slow process of understanding that monsters and people were not mutually exclusive categories. After all, sometimes the most dangerous thing about a Deathworld species is not their capacity for violence, but their capacity for growth.